a man possessed. Rusty also took it one step further this week.
And so much to talk about. It's not this rugby union show. Welcome back.
Well, the international window is officially a thing of the past, and from us in South Africa, at least, the focus certainly falls on the URC, but already a lot of stuff being written, being said, a lot of chatter about what Team Rusty is going to select going into that end of year tour. And don't forget, of course, there is the additional match which was added against Japan, and of course, they're going to have to weigh things up because World Rugby has come out and said that, well, in terms of player management and welfare, they want the top level players are limited to 30 matches a year. So it's going to make things a little bit tricky unless the calendar changes. Of course, it's all towards a move towards one global rugby calendar. And that's a theme that certainly we've been hitting on, myself and Sim, over the last few weeks, even with Nasport a few weeks ago as well. Somebody who knows all about the difficulties of the logistics that rugby requires in terms of playing in different time zones and not having a global calendar is none other than Springbok legend, a man with 31 Springbok test caps. And when people talk about the best goal kicking, a drop goal kicking performance by a Bok, generally they'll talk about Yanni de Beer in that's 1999 World Cup against England, where he dropped 5. But another man who dropped a couple of droppies against England, André Pretorius, you dropped 4 in 2016, if I remember correctly. And that was interesting. What a year that was, because the game before you'd lost, you played England twice. I don't think you played that game. I think maybe you might have sat the first one out. And then the second one, I know Butchie got dropped and you came into the squad. And you dropped 4 against the English, Dre. But first things first, so glad you could join us from Japan. Mushi Mushi.
Konbanwa, Kola-san. Nice to see you.
It's really good to see you, my brother. But for me, I've got a lot of memories of you, mostly at Ellis Park, but in a green and gold jersey, the one that sticks out in my mind, 2016, Springboks at Twickenham against England. Boks lost the first match and then he won the second. If I remember correctly, it was the first time in 8 matches that the Springboks had beaten England. But by that time, Jake White was in trouble. He had to travel back home to go and answer to SA Rugby, and you guys played that match without a head coach. It was an interesting year, but only a year out from winning the World Cup. Is that one of your highlights? For me, it is.
It's funny you should mention that one, because you say the Boks lost the first one and then won the second one. It's actually, I lost the first one for us. Butchie was having a tremendous game and got injured. He didn't get dropped. I think if he didn't get injured, he'd play the second test. So he got injured. We were leading, playing well. And I came on, I missed a tackle. They scored. There's 1 or 2 more mistakes from my side and it changed the game. And we lost that test. We actually lost that test. And I don't think Jake had any other options left in the touring squad. I really don't think he wanted me to select me for that next one, and justifiably so. I was terrible. I had about 20-25 minutes, and I was looking at how many mistakes I can make in that time. It looked like, and then the next test obviously went really well for us, and we got the win. So it was good to come back home with the win off, especially after that test. But Butchie was playing great rugby then.
Yeah, no, he was. But it was a very good England team. I think people might forget, if you look back at history, that, that is the follow-up from the team that won the 2003 World Cup. There wasn't a Johnny Wilkinson on the field. Was it Danny Cipriani? And I remember it was Danny Cipriani because it was a weird start to that match. They didn't do a kickoff. He did like a little grubber in the beginning of the game, but I can't remember which of the test matches it was. It was very weird, but a really memorable tour. But like I say, under pressure, and less than a year later, you guys were in Paris. You won the World Cup. Did you play in that final against England again?
Nearly went on with a couple of minutes into the game, 2 injuries. I think Percy and Fourie got injured, and there was going to be a shuffle with myself and Ruan Pienaar going on. And luckily, both the boys didn't come off, and we got the win on that day too. So, but no, we never played in the final, only in the semi-final.
Yeah, no, that's hectic. And the reason I ask is because a lot of people, I think, you don't think about the logistics of what happens in a World Cup final. You kind of just focus on the score, and then the rugby is almost secondary, and then everything else that happens around it is almost forgotten. And I remember very distinctly because they messed up my accreditation, and they were incredibly strict, but they had me down as a photographer. So they put myself and Russell Belter, who was filming, on the field. Like, we were just behind the advertising boards, and there was a huge gap between us and the stands. It was so weird because every time the guys came past and we shouted, because I couldn't be anything but a fan, they heard me, and Victor looked at me at a line out because just before he made his call, I yelled, "Go Victor!" And then he looked at me like this, and I'm like, oh shit, if we lose this line out, it's going to be my fault, but I'm never going to mention it to anyone. And then I remember Ruan Pienaar, he warmed up before the end of the match. He was sent down the stands, and he stood right next to us warming up, and he was just shaking like this. And I think it was the anticipation, I think it was the nerves, I think it was the moment, and then he never ran onto the field. So these things happen a lot more often than I think fans often see, but you're part of, I think, what was a phenomenal World Cup squad. You guys had an incredible tour.
I was very privileged to have been taken with that team. Jake had an idea that there was something I could do in certain pressure games, and he always believed in me when it came to that. Jake worked well with me. He never made me feel like the jersey was mine. I always had to fight for it. Whereas at the Lions, I think the recruitment was at times not up to standard in terms of the amount of 10s that we had. And when I got injured, we'd normally get a 12 or a 15 or someone filling in the gaps until we got some recognized 10. So I was always playing at the Lions. But when I got to the box, that's one thing that Jake did really well. He never made me feel like that jersey was mine, and I was always fighting for it.
Yeah, and I'd love to chat about your coaching journey as well now, because you get to see it from the other side, which I think must be a fascinating for a professional rugby player, because I don't know, was coaching always in the pipeline? Was it always an option, or were you looking at other things and then ended up coaching because you know it's your game, it's what you do, it's what you know?
I think the position I played, you were coaching anyway. You were always helping, assisting, having input into certain strategic and technical and tactical events. So you were always part of that. But no, I think that my because I wanted to compete in the game, and if I couldn't go into coaching, I'd probably still be playing. Probably wouldn't be able to walk now, but I'd probably still be playing. So that was an easy transition going into the coaching. But I think I was always going to go into coaching after that.
Yeah, and you managed to get through a couple of teams. I remember you at in Potch. You did Varsity Cup as well with Booker. With Booker, and then the Leopards. I remember that little stint as well. And then how did you end up in Japan?
Well, I think it was time to leave Potch at that stage. The Puck was so good for me. The Leopards as well. That's where I got the opportunity to coach. Started with the Puck under 21s, or actually with a Puck residence side, Patria. And from there, went on to be involved as a Puck. And then coach was Jonathan McQuena. Took over from him from the Leopards. And then, you kind of feel like you've hit the ceiling, and you want to, because you've got ambition and you don't really know where the structures want to go, or their vision doesn't align with yours. I got the opportunity through one of the Crusaders coaches, because they've got the Hino Red Dolphins have got a had an association with the Crusaders, and I'd done a Zoom and a LinkedIn with one of the Crusaders coaches, and when something opened up, he contacted me, and that's how I got it.
Who was that? Was that Simon Thomas? I remember chatting
Grant
to
Keenan.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, there's a couple of them in Japan. I remember seeing or running into Todd Blackadder, and that was already back in 2019. And, he speaks very fluent Japanese. He's married to a Japanese lady. And I remember him saying, "Oh, mate, just leave South Africa and come here." And this is where it's at. But it's quite a culture shift. It's really, really different to anywhere else I've ever been on a rugby tour, because rugby specifically is played with countries that have a lot of similarities. But then you get to Japan, Dre. That shift for you, was it huge?
It was quite big. But the country itself, it's something that I'm really glad my kids get to see and grow up in, with the respect, the humility, just the humbleness that these people look to treat other people with. So I'm really happy about that. But with the coaching, it's a challenge. The language is a challenge, but it also improves your coaching. You have to really simplify your messages. You can't double up on meetings. So you've got one chance. And in the beginning, it was tough, but it does improve. And then I think the biggest thing for me was that where I'm from, we were always trying to get players to speak up, have an input, be part of the process. Yeah. And the first challenge I had, obviously after the language, was I got players that were just nodding, and because you said it, we're going to do it. And in the beginning, didn't understand enough Japanese. He understood no Japanese, and they would walk out and they would give each other the solutions, but they wouldn't give it to me. And once my Japanese started becoming a bit better, we would have a meeting, and I'm pretty sensitive to body language when I'm doing a meeting to see, am I hitting the right notes? Am I getting the message across? And I would see two of the players not really agreeing, but not speaking up. And then once they walk out, I'd listen to their conversation. I'd call them back and I'd say, that's what I'm looking for. That's exactly it. That's a better idea than I had. So let's implement that. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we cut it. And if it does, we keep it. And through that, and I think through the building the relationships, they're also not really used to that. Coaches really taking an interest into their family life off the field and how they're doing. I think that was something different to them. But once they got used to that, the walls got broken down a bit. So the backs and the defense meetings are a bit different now to what they were when I started.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was I spoke to who's also coaching in Japan, or at least had a stint, trying to explain just the absolute exasperation he felt because of the way that culturally those players react to a coach who shouts at them. You know, we used to it. We used to a coach saying all sorts of things about you and your ma and the horse you came in on until you get it right. But if you do that in Japan, they take it incredibly seriously. In fact, they carry it home. They'll carry it back to work or back to the rugby field the next day. They might even walk away from the coach every time they see him, or try and avoid you, whatever the case is. So those little nuances for me have always been absolutely fascinating, because I don't think we think about the fact that you're not just reinventing yourself as a coach when you move to Japan or as a player. You have to reinvent yourself literally as a person, because you have to get into the mindset, into the culture. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
For sure. And the reason the shouting doesn't work, it's because they're hard on themselves than anybody else. So they've got this inner voice telling them how bad they are. How do they dare make that mistake? And then they've got the coach doing the same. It's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And also trying to reinvent the wheel and kind of fight their culture within the coaching. I've I haven't tried it because I've really embraced the way that they are, and I want to make them feel free. And if they want to speak up, they can. If they don't want to, I respect that. But I don't think you must go and fight the way that they have been brought up. You should give them the freedom to feel that they can change that in the system. But these players are so hard on themselves. One of the biggest challenges is getting them to understand that I'm coaching defense at the moment. So my biggest thing for them in the systems are, I want you to make mistakes. I want to see the mistakes. Otherwise, we've got no footage to work with. And you don't get the feeling of what doesn't feel great. And then we can get to the part where we start making new mistakes. And they're getting better with it. But in the beginning, you're not allowed to make a mistake. Once you make a mistake, you shouldn't be selected for the next couple of games, never mind just the next one. So that's why that recipe for me with the shouting and, you do have times when you do raise your voice and it has impact them, because then they know, okay, wait, something's wrong here. And it's normally an effort-based thing, something where we've said, we want to outwork their attack, or we want to be the first to dive on loose balls, or when we get to line breaks, we want one more ruck attitude. Those things, and it's not every time, but once there's times when you do raise your voice, but it's not a shouting fest with these guys. It's going on. Managing their emotions for themselves is probably more important than the shouting.
Yeah, I think the guy one of the guys that I met in Tokyo who put it in context for me is, he said, and it was an Aussie who'd lived there, speaks the language, just worked there, said to me that they are respectful to a fault. It's almost at their own individual detriment that they show levels of respect. And I love this conversation because there are so many South African coaches and players who are headed to Japan. And one of the examples he gave me was they had to do assertiveness training for the guys who drive ambulances, the EMS guys, because they would never go through a red light. They would never overtake on the wrong side of the road. They would sit in rush hour traffic while somebody is literally losing their life because they don't want to break the law, even though you're allowed to. And that for me just completely encapsulated what Japanese rugby is all about. And obviously Eddie Jones knows the culture oh so well. How's he been taken on by the rugby fans, the structures, the players? He's a very popular figure in Japanese rugby, and I'm glad that he's ended up back in Japan, because I kind of think he's best suited for that.
He gets them to believe in what he wants to do, and he gets them to believe that they're the quickest rugby team on the planet. And he gets ways to show that to them visually, and then they buy in. And they go, well, obviously this guy knows what he's talking about, and we'll be following him. So Eddie is brilliant with that. And the way that Eddie's put his coaching staff together with Victor there, Dan Bowden, I think he's got Gary Golding now. He's also got a wealth of experience and diversity around him, which I think helps as well. But he understands the culture. You said it at the start of your sentence there. He understands the culture, and he'll push. I think that the good thing for him is he'll know where until, which spot he can go to in pushing them, and then he can back off. Where I think we, as the foreign coaches, we've got to go trial and error, and sometimes you go too far, and just hopefully that too far is not doesn't make irreparable damage, and you can still connect to the player afterwards. But coaching is a thing. You're going to make mistakes, and it's part of it. It just feels like sometimes when you make mistakes, it's taken on another level.
You with Red Dolphins at the moment. How's it been going this season? Is it a team that's on the up? Because I think things are getting really tough in Japan. There are a lot of quality international players and a lot of young Japanese players starting to come through the ranks.
Our season hasn't started, but we've lost 2 international players. We've lost Rory Arnold to NEC, and we've lost Augustine Pulu. He's gone back to New Zealand He played for Tonga a couple of tests now in the PNC International. So that's a big blow. We got in some new recruits, some young, fresh blood, looking to make, to add some good value to the system. Done well in the couple of, or the two warm-up matches we've played so far. Our season starts in December. Japan's got a really long preseason, and they've actually made up a league now, the League One Rising, for the first 2 games of all the warm-ups, to give all the fringe players and company players that don't play a lot during the season, so that you can see all the young players and those players in there. So we, I think it's just like last season. Our goal is to firstly stay in Division 2 and then, try for a top 3 spot. But everybody's working hard. Everybody wants that. And like you said, the international players on show in Japan at the moment is top class.
Yeah, Arnold, I mean, I can only imagine an international quality lock must be like hen's teeth in Japan. They must be incredibly popular. And then to lose Gus Pulu, that's a lot of experience. I mean, that guy's been around the block in New Zealand. And yes, he did play very recently as well in the Pacific Nations Challenge. And it was an incredible competition. The level or the standard is great. What do you make of the standard of Japanese rugby at the moment?
It's definitely on the up, and it's because they understand what they go with. I mean, Eddie's got that David and Goliath presentation down to a T, where you need to find out what your strengths are, and you need to put down a lot of those pictures, and you need to find out what your opponent's weaknesses are, and you need to see a lot more of those. So he understands how he wants to play. I think size will always be a problem in certain positions. That's why you'll see certain position being filled by foreigners, but their skill set X is just unbelievable. Like I said, I'm doing defense at the moment, and you think you've got a side on the ropes and they get 2 passes away under pressure, and you have to go and watch the recording to see how they did it. Their skill set's unbelievable, and then you got some genuine pace in some of these backlines that's difficult to stop. And look, they love a leg chop. They're not scared of going low and hitting the knees. Some of the Afrikaans boys that's at our club, first training out, big leg chop, and Murray got up. He said, "Yeah, coach, I don't see bum for a leg chop here, Nina."
Yeah, no. And they've seen it actually properly work in Brighton a couple of years ago. It was in 2015 when they managed to get one over the Springboks. I'm also very fascinated that your coaching journey, that's my dog going off in the background because my kids have walked out. They're on holiday. So any noises that you hear, it's not me. It's the dog and then the kids. But that's my life now. And my fascination with your coaching journey is because we tend to want to always do the stereotypical thing. André was a fly half. He was a very good kicker. He's going to be a kicking coach and maybe an attack coach. I love that you're doing defense as well. I do believe that you get stuck in the attack part of the game as well, but it's so nice that you can add an extra, sort of feather to your bow. How have you found that? I don't want to call it a switch and focus because everybody needs to know about defense, but to be able to specialize in it, what's that been like?
It's been great. I mean, I was primarily at attack, backs, kicking, and I was head coach at the Pick and at the Leopards. And when I got here, I had a couple of things that I was going to do. And after the second game, I got given the defense, which I didn't expect, and I didn't have a preseason. So we went that first season without a preseason, and from there I've developed my own system, trying to install it here. So this is the third year that I'm running this, and it's opened my eyes to new attacking opportunities, because I know what's difficult to defend. So as an attack coach, when I do get an opportunity again to be an attack coach, I know which pictures, and it'll become more and more as time goes by, I know which pictures the defense coaches doesn't want to see. And if you can put those pictures in front of the defense more often than not, somewhere under fatigue, wrong read, mismatch, call it what you want, you're going to get some reward from that. So in that regard, it's been really good. The other thing is that I think I was I was never taught how to tackle. I was always a guy that just took space. I got in the way. And when I went to the force, it's probably the first time that I ever got taught proper tackle technique, not just hitting bags. And so my philosophy is I'm building the defense system from the inside out. I start with tackling, and then we start putting systems and that together. And the great thing is to see, I do a test battery with all the Japanese players every season at the start. And how many of them come from university with a crossover where they go right foot, left shoulder, or left foot, right shoulder. So that's the first thing we fix. And just to see these gents improve in an area that they thought they were actually fine at, and to start seeing big hits, guys not getting run over, making tackles in big spaces because their tracking sorted out, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That's great. But again, from the attacking side, you do see some other pictures that you want to expose when you do get an opportunity again.
Yeah, that is fascinating for me, how many top-level rugby players anywhere across the world might be missing what you'd assume is a key technique which juniors are being taught at school. And I figured this out when it comes to defense as well, because at school I was a burly guy for a center. I loved putting in a big hit. I was proud of how good a defender I was, until I got to club and all of a sudden somebody said, "Bro, you're not even shortening your stance. You're not even adjusting for the tackle. You're just bashing in there. You actually don't know how to tackle." Do you find that quite a lot? And I mean, even with simple skills like the pass, there are rugby players who they know how to pass a ball, but in terms of the technique that they use, they might not necessarily cradle it in the right way, and they don't get the distance that they want to, especially if they're playing amongst the backs, and they might have to, do a nice little 30, 40, 50 meter pass on either side. Are you as surprised as I was then at the number of top level players who always seem to have missed something in their development, like something small?
Great point. And a small thing is, like, the most important part of passing is your catching. And you see guys at high speeds with their hands down, and then they need to transition to make the pass. And if they had their hands up, that would have been a lot smoother. Small thing.
Yeah.
And then you get forwards. Yeah. Change that within the pot system to get the ball out the back. And that half of a second that you give the anchor at the back time, that's where you cut the corner and you get around them. Or you get it wrong and you can't transition, you get caught man and ball, cleaners go past and they get the turnover. That's how small the margins are. But you're 100% right. It's such small things. But again, it comes down to everything we do. You don't know what you don't know. In coaching, as a player, as a SNC coach, as a presenter, call it what you want. Sometimes you sit down and someone says something and you go, I didn't even think of that. And if you're not going to make the effort to try and find out what those things are, you're not going to know what you don't know. And that's the difference, I think.
How much of the Springboks are you able to watch when you're on the road? I assume because you're pre-seasoning, you weren't, you've been at home fairly recently, at least in the last few months. But how much of the Springbok season have you caught?
Pretty much all of it. Look, my weekend sleep routine has gone out the window. The time zones, it's either a 12 o'clock or a 2 o'clock match. And now with the URC also starting, the weekend sleep routine is not great. And I do some podcast analysis for Megafoon and Mbia Velman on the Lekker Rugby Pod and those boys. So I try and see as much as possible. And it also forces me to stay ahead of the trends to find anything on international rugby. So I try and watch as much rugby as I can.
Yeah, no, well, definitely want to give those guys a shout out to the Lekker Rugby Pod. We'll put it up in the description below, so make sure you catch André and some of that analysis. We might steal you for some analysis now that I know you're up watching URC. because it's early days still, so it's very hard to sort of gauge what the form book is going to look like. But what is interesting now is that there are a couple of South African teams, more than I would have anticipated at this early stage of the game, who are overseas already. I think the Bulls have just left. Sharks are over there. What is like 3-week tour. I mean, it's an entire month. It's a very long tour and a very long time to be away from home. And like I say, early days, maybe still too early to sort of see what things are going to look like at the end of the season, especially when you look at a team like Leinster, who are still to get a win under the belt, but we know what they can do. And when they're at full strength, I'm pretty sure that the results will come. It won't be quite like what we saw in the last 2 weeks. The one team that does get a lot of criticism, and I've been reading, and there have been a couple of articles now written in the last 2-3 days, is the Lions. He spoke about the fact that recruitment was always a challenge, and I think it still is, all these years later. It's not even just the recruitment. It's once they do unearth the diamond, holding on to them, like an Edwil van der Merwe, who was now at the Sharks, is a very difficult thing. I don't know how they turn it around, because there is a lot of talent that comes through Johannesburg. It's just that they always end up elsewhere. I always think if you had to put together a combined 15 of the best Lions or players in the last 10 to 15 years, we would look like a Springbok team, and a very, very good one. What can those guys do to keep their talent, André? Money's always going to be a problem. You want people to come out to Ellis Park. I can see Ellis Park from where I'm sitting because I live in Kensington. I can see the roof right here. And I love going down to the stadium, but a lot of people don't like driving to downtown Joburg, and you don't get the fans out, and it is a problem.
It's a difficult question, and the reason I know that it's the coaches get it right sometimes, because they do have their performances where you go, if they can put out these 80 minutes 4, 5, 6 times, 6 weeks in a row, they get to playoffs, and then they're just rocks and diamonds. And I think they need to find out what is causing that. My one opinion there is, I think they need a leader. They need someone who is not just talk but also play. I think a guy like Versage is a good. He plays really hard, and I think he's a good captain. I don't know what his talking's like and how he motivates. Where Frankie, I think, is a good player. Also, not too sure about. He speaks well at press conferences, and he's not sure what that looks like when the chips are down. Are we shouting, or are we keeping calm? Are we looking at a next job attitude, etc., etc.? So I think that's the first thing. They need a leader. They need someone that go, that's the big lion. That's I'm going to war with him. Because once you get that, you start building the whole system around that. And if you think about the players that have left, obviously they get offered more money. That's a reason. But if you create a system that players don't want to leave, you're already giving yourself an opportunity to keep those players. What that looks like, I don't know. They're facing a lot of challenges, but I do know they get it right sometimes, and then there's no reason for them to be consistent. You look at the Bulls' performances; it just looks like a team that's the cohesion is just not there yet. It's going to be there.
Yeah,
they've got quality players. They got new coaches, or they got a new head coach. They got new players in there. That cohesion is still, but it's they find a way to win. At least they're winning. Whereas the Lions had an opportunity on the weekend. It's an away game. Doesn't matter. It's Zebra. It's an away game. You need to find a way to win. And for my opinion, there, your cohesion and the environment you put out and the culture then comes through and gets you those 3 points. You beat them 23-22 or whatever the case may be. So I'm not sure what the answer is. It's sad because I'm still a Lion, as I would be until the day that I die. Still support them, and I feel for the coaches sometimes because you can see it's there. They get it right, and then the next week, we've done some analysis on it. It's players not getting back into position quick enough. It's players not doing this, but coaches take responsibility for that. You can't say, yeah, but I told them that. If they're not doing it, you haven't taught them that. That's the way you should be looking at it. So I want to see what happens with their sponsors. Look, it's no secret that that's not a Lions jersey for me that they're playing in at the moment. It kind of reminds me of the Springboks training jersey or warm-up jersey for the test. But yeah, I'll be a Lion until the day that I die. But the short answer to your question is, I don't know how. There's certain things that you need to keep players there, and do the players really want to stay there?
Yeah, there's so many little challenges that they've got to contend with. And you've done it already, because earlier you said there's things that sometimes somebody says that you haven't thought of. And it's not that I don't think or consider leadership in the team context, but I think there is a truth to that every really good team that you can think of, they've got inspirational type captain, a leader who leads not just by example, but is able to lead from the side of the field if need be. And looking at the last couple of Lions teams that I think did well was, there was a Josh Strauss, or there was a Warren Whiteley. And maybe since Warren left, there hasn't been somebody who was the automatic name to just step back in and fill that void. It's a fascinating one. And obviously, you need a very strong sponsor who's going to stand with the team when the chips are down as well. And no secret that they started the season appealing to potential sponsors as well. So things are tough in Joburg. And it's very sad because, to my mind, they still, though, despite all of these challenges, play a really good brand of rugby. I mean, I enjoy watching the Lions. It's like the Lions for me, it's the Cheetahs for me. These are the two teams in South Africa that I know whatever happens in the game, it will be fun. It's going to be explosive. It's going to be exciting. There'll be a 2-pass try. There'll be something spectacular is going to happen. But if you don't get the results, ultimately, it's not going to matter. My worry as well, though, and this is why I mentioned the fans, and maybe, I hope Rudolph Stroily doesn't watch this, a relook at Ellis Park. And like I say, if I look at it, I'm about 1 kilometer away as the crow flies to the stadium. So I love this. I love Joburg. I love being in the center of it. But it is a challenge. People don't come out. And even if the Lions were winning match in, match out every week, I don't know if they were going to get 30, 40,000 people coming through for a random URC match unless it's a final. We also saw the Currie Cup final, which was heartbreaking for me, because you want those players to play in front of a big crowd. You want them to feel that buzz. And I know ultimately it went the way of it didn't go the Lions' way, but you want them to experience it still. And well done to Griquas, incidentally, for what I think was a really good win, but it was disappointing. I wanted to see a little bit more, because Ellis Park is a hallowed ground. It is a special, special place in the history of South African rugby.
That was sad. It's 2 years in a row now where I've sat up and watched the Currie Cup final getting beaten with the final kick. And last year's one with Jordan was even worse, because I'm a big Jordan fan. And then he went across and he kicked that monster in the rain. I don't know if there's a lot of players in the world that kicks that kick, but he did.
Yeah.
So very, very sad. And it's those types of games, X, that I'm talking about. It's those types of games where you're supposed to lose them, but you find a way to win. Alex Ferguson always spoke about, good teams find a way to win. And but if the heartbeat is not, it's not a healthy heartbeat. You got players worried about their future, which I think is a reality in the team, that nobody hears about sponsors, and you expect them to make a 90% tackle completion and to make line breaks and to get all their line outs, and they're worried about their families. Are we going to have a rugby team in 6 months from now? Do we have a sponsor? I don't know what the inner circle talk is there. I'm just spitballing at the moment, but those are real concerns. And it's though that game really put the cherry on top for me, where I said, I think the Lions are in trouble. They put some URC players into that side, and take nothing away from the Griquas. Peter Berg's got plans for days. He's technically brilliant. And I think the sad thing for me as well with the results from the Lions are that the coaches don't get the credit that they do in certain instances. I mean, you get some top quality defense games, and it gets overshadowed by the next three that they lose by a couple. And then you get some set piece tries, and Ricardo doesn't get any credit for that, or Jock doesn't get any credit for the defense. Barrent with the forwards, the lineouts, you can see the detail within the lineout system, but they just get overshadowed by all the negativity from what seems to be the inconsistent results. And the coaches, like I said, they'll take responsibility for it. But they get it right sometimes. There's no reason that they can get that right more often than not. But they do have challenges.
Yeah, life of a coach. Shout out to Peter Berg. Is awesome. I think Marvi's Furi also went back and added his experience to Griqua's awesome coach, and he knows and loves that part of the world. So yeah, it matters very much. And talking about coaches, I see Mosi, I see Jacques Fourie has gone very, very grey as well. So hopefully he'll speak to us sometime after the URC. André, I thought we were actually going to talk mostly about the Springboks, but I just looked up at my clock and we've been going for almost an hour. So I'm going to release you because we're going to have it as a standalone conversation, because the moment you start talking about Rassie and his plans and the box, that is another rabbit hole. So I didn't even plan this conversation. I'm really glad that we touched on the Lions since we're in the heat of URC. And I think when I do get you back on, and hopefully I can soon, it'll be very interesting to measure how they've gone on, they've developed. The one thing that they do have or were able to do when we talk about recruitment is they've been able to hold on to a couple of those junior Springboks, which I think is a really good start. The challenge is, can you keep those guys 3 years, 4 years, 5 years into the future? But that's a good start because you want to have a really, really good base. And that's heartening for the Lions. I like to see these youngsters, and hopefully they'll get a run. It is a massive step up. We saw a couple of them not quite shoot the lights out in the Currie Cup, and I'm talking across all of the teams, because they'd become sort of overnight heroes and they looked incredible in that under-20 championship. But then when you take a step up against senior players, it is very, very difficult. But the talent is there, which is great.
Yeah, the international games on that level was phenomenal. But you go and play against the Jimmy Stanios Pumas in Nelspruit, or you go to Kimberley and you go and play the Griquas on their field, you start seeing that international tournament as something else. The Currie Cup, it will always be strong, and for an under-20 player, it's a great experience. And you can't expect him to shoot lights out. It's supposed to be tough. I remember when I was at university, you'd get opportunities to go and play for the first team as an under-19 or under-20 player. Yeah. Those are big eyes. You go to Alberton, play at 9 at night or 7 at night. There's Randfontein. I'm like, you just want to survive. Never mind catch and pass and all of that. But that's what it was about. And this experience that they had with the Currie Cup would go a long way for them to go. And the nice thing is they got the opportunity with the Lions. So hopefully that's also a thing that they look at once they do start getting other options. Is this is the union that gave me an opportunity. I'd like to repay them, and I'd like to stay here. And that's the kind of family you want to start building. But get your leader, get that guy they want to follow, get the main lion in there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a great way to wrap it up, because I think if we were to pick one thing that the Lions could potentially do in a relatively short space of time, or at least in the medium term, is find that guy, find that leader. Yeah. Maybe you import him, I don't know, but I would like it to be a Joburger through and through. I think it makes a difference. Yeah. Not somebody who's had to come in and take on the culture of the Lions, but somebody who was, in Alberton, who was at Monas, who was at Kes, or whatever the case may be, I think it will go a very, very long way. I'm not going to keep you, Andre, because once I start, I can't stop. I'm like Pringles. So, let's not keep it going, but I am gonna hold you to it, and I hope we can catch up. I know that the time zone difference is a bit of a mess, so I'm really, really grateful for you staying up and having this conversation with us. And again, a shout out to Lekker Rugby podcast. You guys do really, really good work. I've seen a couple of those videos, so make sure if you're watching this that you go and check it out, give them a like, and share and subscribe to them as well. We are part of this building community, which is fantastic. Until the next time, Mr. Pretorius, arigato gozaimasu.
Yeah, doitashimaste. And give my bigs to Sim as well. Thank you.
Yeah, he's got another job. At least that's what he tells us. So hopefully the next time round, it will be the three of us having a chat, looking at the Lions, and hopefully they'll be doing well. We don't want to see them at the bottom of the table. They've got too much talent, and their ambition going into the season was to fight for a playoff place, and I still think they can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thanks, X. It was good.
Dre, good to see you, and we'll speak soon. Thanks very much, everyone. And if you enjoy this conversation, do give us a like, a share, subscribe, and drop in the comments as well if you have any questions that we can pose to Andre. Even if he's not on the show with us, we could always send them off, and by the next time that he comes back on, address one or two of those things. But absolute pleasure having a full-blown Lions Springbok legend on the show with us. Thanks, Andre.
That Rugby Union Show. What a week it's been.
He's playing like a man possessed.
And so much to talk about. It's not this Rugby Union Show. It's That Rugby Union Show.